You have a boarding group. You know your number, you know roughly when they'll call it, and you know what it cost you. Now tell me your deplaning group. There isn't one. There has never been one. Every airline on Earth has built an elaborate machine for getting you onto the aircraft. Zones, tiers, priority lanes, early access sold as a product with a price on it. Ask what the system is for getting you off, and the answer is that people stand up and it resolves itself somehow. Same aircraft, same aisle, same passengers, same bags. One direction is one of the most heavily engineered processes in commercial aviation. The other direction is a mob. That's not an oversight, and it isn't laziness. Once you see why, you'll never look at the aisle the same way again, because the reason is written into who is paying for the minutes. Start with how strange the gap actually is, because the numbers are worse than you'd guess. Before any airliner carries a passenger, the manufacturer has to prove something to regulators. The rule is Part 25, Section 803, and it says that an aircraft seating more than 44 people must be capable of being fully evacuated, every passenger and every crew member, onto the ground, in 90 seconds or less. 90 seconds. A full aircraft, empty. And the conditions are harsher than most people realize, which matters, because this is the part that gets misquoted constantly. That demonstration is run using only half the exits, the ones on a single side of the fuselage. It's conducted in darkness, or simulated darkness, with only the emergency lighting on. Cabin baggage and blankets are deliberately scattered in the aisles as obstacles, and every participant has to be on the ground unaided. Half the doors in the dark, tripping over luggage. 90 seconds. Now think about the last time you landed. Doors open, jet bridge attached, daylight, nobody panicking, all the time in the world. 10 minutes. 15 on a full narrow body, on a wide body longer. The same aircraft that must legally prove it can empty in a minute and a half routinely takes 10 times that on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. So the machine is capable. Something else is deciding, and I want to be careful here, because there's an obvious objection, and it's a fair one. An emergency evacuation is not a fair comparison. In a real evacuation, people leave their bags, slides are deployed, crew are screaming at everyone to move, and nobody is retrieving a coat from row 28. Naturally, it's faster. Fine. But hold on to a real number. At Glasgow in 2012, a 737-800 filled with smoke, and the captain ordered an evacuation. All the exits were used. It still took nearly 4 minutes, an evacuation that could have been done in around 45 seconds. Even in genuine emergencies, the gap between what the aircraft can do and what people actually do is enormous. So the 90-second rule isn't a promise about your Tuesday. It's proof that the physical constraint isn't the airplane. The airplane is fine. The bottleneck is the process wrapped around it, and processes are designed by somebody for some reason. And here's the detail that proves somebody thought hard about one end and not the other. Boarding has been studied to death. There's a method named after an astrophysicist, Jason Steffen, who modeled it and found the optimal sequence. Alternating rows, window seats first, spread across the cabin so nobody is loading a bin next to anybody else. Airlines have run trials on back to front, outside in, random assignment, and reverse pyramid. Delta, United, and American have each rebuilt their boarding order more than once. Now count the peer-reviewed deplaning methods, count the airline trials of deplaning order, count the branded deplaning products. So, who designed the boarding process, and why did nobody design the other one? Follow the clock, because this is the entire answer, and it takes about 30 seconds to explain. An aircraft makes money when it's flying. On the ground, it earns nothing while still costing the airline gate fees, crew hours, and the opportunity to be somewhere else. So airlines obsess over turnaround time, and boarding sits right in the middle of it. Every minute the boarding process drags on is a minute the door stays open, the departure slips, the connection tightens, and the aircraft's schedule for the rest of the day gets a little more fragile. Boarding delays are expensive, they're measurable, they're attributable, and they compound. Now, run the same logic on arrival. The aircraft has landed, it's parked, The block time is recorded, the flight is complete, the on-time statistic has already been captured at the moment the parking brake was set. From the airline's accounting perspective, that flight is finished. Then 200 people spend 15 minutes getting out of it. Whose 15 minutes is that? Not the airline's, yours. And your time doesn't appear on any balance sheet anywhere in that company. That's the whole asymmetry. Boarding is engineered because slow boarding costs the airline money. Deplaning is unengineered because slow deplaning costs you money. And you are not the customer for that particular minute. There's a caveat worth stating because it's the strongest counter-argument. On a quick turn, deplaning does block boarding, so a slow exit can delay the next departure. Airlines do care about that. But notice the shape of even that concern. They care about the deplaning of the flight before yours because it delays the flight they're about to operate. The interest is still in the departure, never in the arrival, which leaves one thing unexplained. If everyone is equally motivated to get off, why is the front of the aircraft so slow? You'd assume row 2 walks straight out. Row 2 paid for that, and row 2 still stands there. The reason is in the bins above your head, and it's a piece of geometry almost nobody notices. Think about how those bins got filled. Passengers board from the front and walk backwards to their seats. Somebody in row 31 walks past rows 1 through 30 carrying a bag, sees the first empty bin, and puts it there. Multiply by 180 people and the result is systematic. The bins at the front of the cabin are disproportionately full of the bags of people sitting further back. Now reverse it. The door opens, the people nearest the exit stand up, and a meaningful number of them are not reaching for the bin directly above their own row. Their bag is 4 rows behind or across the aisle because that's where the space was, so they wait for a gap, move against the flow, retrieve it, and come back. Every one of those retrievals stops the aisle completely. An aisle is a single file queue with no overtaking, so one person reaching backwards halts everyone behind them. The front of the aircraft is slow because it's where other people's luggage ended up. And the single aisle is what turns that into a hard limit. One aisle means one person at a time in one direction, with no way around. A narrow body carrying 180 people is asking all of them through a corridor the width of one adult. It doesn't matter how motivated everyone is. The throughput of a single file queue is set by its slowest member, and there are 180 chances to draw a slow one. And that's a self-inflicted wound with a traceable origin, because the bins weren't always this crowded. Checked bag fees pushed luggage into the cabin. American carriers took in more than $7 billion in checked bag fees in a recent year, and every one of those charges is an argument for bringing the bag on board instead. The airline monetized the bag moved into the cabin, and the cabin became harder to empty. Which brings us to the part your comments section is already typing, and it's the best question in this whole story. Why not just open the back door? Almost every narrow body has one, 2 staircases, 2 flows, and the aisle empties from both ends at once. Studies and airline trials consistently find double door operations meaningfully faster. So what's stopping it? The explanation you'll usually hear is that loading the aircraft from the rear risks tipping it onto its tail. That's a real phenomenon in aircraft handling, but it isn't the reason you walk out the front, and I don't want to hand you a myth. The real reason is more boring and more revealing. It's the jet bridge. A jet bridge is a fixed piece of airport infrastructure that swings from the terminal to a door. On a narrow body, the rear door sits behind the wing, and the wing is in the way. Jet bridges can serve multiple doors on some wide bodies, but even there, none of them reach the rear door for exactly that reason. To use the back door, you need stairs, which means putting passengers onto the ramp, which means a bus or a walk across live aircraft movement areas. And that requires things airports don't hand out for free: ground staff to marshal people, ramp access, weather contingency, an accessible route for anyone who can't manage stairs, and liability for every one of those steps. American has said plainly that it doesn't use rear door deplaning on certain routes because it lacks the capability to get passengers from that aircraft to the tarmac at that airport. So the constraint is real. It just isn't aerodynamic. It's concrete, staffing, and insurance. And here's how we know it's a choice rather than a law. Plenty of operators do it every day. Ryanair boards and deplanes through both doors as standard, using built-in air stairs, partly to avoid paying for jet bridges at all. The American shuttle still deplanes via the rear door on some routes, a habit inherited through U.S. Airways from the Trump shuttle and Eastern before it. Those Boeing 727s had stairs that dropped out of the tail, and Donald Trump had red carpet fitted to them. Southwest built its reputation on turnarounds where passengers left through the back while the next load came in the front. Qantas has used 3 bridges at once on the A380. United even tried it at scale, installing rear jet bridges for double-door boarding. That experiment ended when one of those rear bridges suffered a mechanical failure and came down onto the wing of a 757. So it can be done. It is being done, and it has been done for 60 years. It requires the airline or the airport to spend something. And the moment you ask who benefits from that spending, you're back at the same accounting problem. The savings land in your afternoon, not in their operating cost. Now, let me put a fair objection to my own argument, because this is where a lot of these videos cheat. Airlines are not indifferent to your experience. A miserable arrival is a bad customer experience, and customer experience does eventually show up in revenue. Some carriers have tried to fix deplaning. Announcements asking people to stay seated until their row is called, rear door operations where the infrastructure allows cabin crew choreographing the flow. The trouble is enforcement. Boarding is enforceable because there's a gate agent, a scanner, and a physical barrier between you and the aircraft. Nobody boards out of turn because the system physically prevents it. At the other end, there's no gate, no scanner, no barrier, and no consequence. The instant that seatbelt sign goes off, 180 people who have been sitting still for 4 hours stand up at once. You cannot zone a process you have no way to enforce, and the airline's only tool is a polite request from a public address system that nobody has ever obeyed. So the honest ruling is not that airlines are villains here. It's that boarding gets a designed system because the airline can enforce one and profits from it. And deplaning gets no system because the airline can't enforce one and doesn't profit from it. Where those two conditions overlap, you get engineering. Where they don't, you get a queue. Which lands us back at the thing you actually bought. That priority boarding tier you paid for or earned or got with a credit card. Think about what it delivered. It bought you access to the bin space, which is real. It bought you a seat before the aisle jammed. It bought you entry. It bought you nothing at the other end. There is no priority deplaning tier at any price on any major carrier. First class sits at the front, which helps, but that's a consequence of cabin geometry rather than a service anyone sold you. Every status you hold expires the moment the wheels touch down. You can pay to be first onto an aircraft. You cannot pay to be first off one. And that's the cleanest possible statement of who this system is built for. Boarding is a product with tiers and prices and a marketing department behind it. Getting off is just something that happens to you. So here's the practical version, since none of this is going to change soon. If your bag ends up behind your row, you are going to be one of the people blocking the aisle. So put it above your own seat or as close as you can manage, even if that means checking it. Ryanair-style rear door operations at a smaller airport will get you out faster than a jet bridge at a big hub. And the single biggest determinant of how long you stand in that aisle isn't your airline. It's how many people around you are carrying bags they were charged to check. One more thing worth sitting with. Every constraint here in the bins, the single aisle, the one usable door, the 15 minutes exists because of decisions about money that were made long before you booked. The aircraft could be empty in 90 seconds. It's been provably able to do that since before most of us were born. Nobody has ever had a financial reason to ask it to.